Well, it's now my honor to introduce this year's distinguished commencement speaker and president of the public policy organization Demos, Heather McGhee. During her years as Demos's president, Heather has worked to reduce both political and economic inequality so that all Americans have an equal say in our democracy and an equal chance to participate in our economy. In addition to her policy advocacy work at Demos, Heather McGhee is a frequent guest on such shows as Meet the Press, which Bill Plappinger's been watching, Real Time with Bill Mayer, and Hardball with Chris Matthews. She has written for numerous national media outlets, including the New York Times, The Nation, and The Hill. She's a recipient of New York University's Mix Silver Award for Leaders on the Fight Against Poverty and of the Citizen Action of New York's Progressive Leadership Award. In 2009, she co-chaired a task force within Americans for Financial Reform that helped shape key provisions in the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform. It's awesome. And the Consumer Protection Act. More recently, McGhee delivered a powerful speech at the opening plenary session of the inaugural Obama Foundation Summit this past November. She's a graduate of Yale University and the University of California at Berkeley School of Law. As you will learn, Heather's life and career aligns well with what we hold central to a Vassar education. First, go to the source. In a world where truth is rigorously challenged and questioned, engaging in primary research, something Vassar graduates all know how to do too well, is increasingly important. Her life shows that. Second, Heather's actions and words really reflect the tenets of Vassar's Engaged Pluralism Initiative, our campus-wide project that seeks to acknowledge and honor difference, encourage honest dialogue, and promote inclusive community. In June, Heather will become a distinguished senior fellow at Demos, and after dinner with her last night and hearing her future plans, I have to say I'm feeling more optimistic about the future of our country. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming this year's commencement speaker, Heather McGhee. Have fun.
Good morning, everyone. So, if it begins to pour, which I don't think it will, Dean Chenette's gonna come and give me an umbrella, we're gonna buckle up, and we're gonna just keep going. Congratulations to the class of 2018, you did it. This is phenomenal. And to your parents and loved ones and family members, your job is not quite yet done, but you have a milestone to celebrate today. To deliver this address at this institution is a great honor for me. I want to thank all the students, the faculty, and particularly the facilities and operations staff who worked overtime to make sure everything was in place today. Ellie and Jasmine for your beautiful remarks, and to the Board of Trustees. And I particularly want to thank President Bradley for welcoming me as the speaker for your first commencement. It's quite something to share this day with you all. I remember my own commencement so vividly, the swirl of emotions as you say goodbye to a place that you've called home, where you found your voice, a place, most importantly, where you made such amazing friends. I know it's a bittersweet day. My words of advice for you today come from some lessons that I've learned while developing a very unlikely friendship. And I mean really unlikely. I mean, his first words to me were, "I'm a white male and I am prejudiced." It was August 2016, and I was a guest on a political call-in show on the TV network C-SPAN. I was there to talk about public policy issues, as I do regularly in my job as president of a think tank that does research and advocacy on solutions to inequality in America. was about halfway through the show, and I'd answered questions about my usual topics: democracy reform, student debt, taxes, trade, and jobs, when a man who would identify himself as Gary from North Carolina called in and uttered those words: "I'm a white male and I'm prejudiced." I was taken aback, but I was also on live television, and a live television show where the camera is locked on my face the whole time, so I had to keep my cool. This Gary from North Carolina went on to detail his prejudice, his fear of black men particularly. He talked about gangs and crime and drugs, things he saw on the news. Now, to me, black men are my father, my brother, my friends. And I was sitting there on set listening to him, thinking that fears like Gary's make their lives harder. Harder for them to rent an apartment, get a job, or walk down the street. But again, live television, close up, just my face. So I'm listening, and then the caller says something that just floored me. He ended this question by asking, "But what can I do to change, to become a better American?" A better American. Now, Gary could not possibly have known that the heart of this question, what does it mean to be an American? In as diverse a nation as ours, who are we? What do we owe to one another? Well, that's been the central animating question of my public life. But more on that in a moment, because right now I'm in the chair, on set, hot lights, live TV, he's asked his question, and now it's up to me to answer it. I take a breath and say the first thing that comes to mind: thank you. I thanked him for admitting his fears and prejudices, because so many people are so unwilling to do just that, and then we exhaust ourselves debating whether prejudice still exists. So then, completely off the top of my head, I gave him some ideas about what he could do to integrate his life, actually get to know black families to counteract his prejudices, turn off the TV news that traffics in stereotypes, and pick up a book about African Americans' contributions to American history, join a church or other group that puts him in fellowship with people of different races. The way these shows are structured, you answer the question and then the control room switches to the next caller. So that was it for Gary and me. But the following weekend, my colleague at Demos put the clip of our exchange up on Facebook, and by Monday it had over 1 million views. Now, Demos' Facebook page is usually charts and graphs, right? So we usually count our page likes in the dozens, but this video went viral. It got posted and reposted and clipped by other sites. It now has over 20 million views. Later the next week, I was on TV again, this time talking about the viral video, and Gary was at home watching. He watches a lot of cable. He saw my Twitter handle on the bottom of the screen and got on Twitter for the first time to contact me. His first tweet was, "How does this thing work?" But he figured it out and he found me. We talked on the phone, and then a couple of months later, when my job took me to North Carolina, I paid him a visit. It turns out he had taken my recommendations to heart and set out on a journey to change his life. He told me that when he heard my answer to his call, it was like I had, quote, "wiped the dirt from a window and let the light in." As I would get to know this racist caller, and then, despite the odds, over the past nearly 2 years, learn to call this Gary a friend, our conversations have often come back to this question: what does it mean to be an American? And I wonder if you've ever asked yourself that question. Even those of you who are citizens of other countries but have spent your college years here, whether you intend to stay and make a life or go home, it's still relevant to you. In fact, being from another country and spending time here has always been a signature part of the American experience. In the city that I live, New York City, 40% of the population is foreign-born, and they're my neighbors still. So have you figured it out? It's not an easy question. Even our American mottos don't fully give us an answer for today. Is it "in God we trust"? But which God? We practice nearly every religion on the globe, including, increasingly, none. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? We're ranked pretty low on the Global Happiness Index. And we have the largest per capita prison population in the world. All men are created equal? I run an organization entirely focused on American inequality. The richest 1% of us now own 40% of the nation's wealth. No, I think it's going to be up to you, to your generation, to define anew what it means to be an American. You are part of the largest, most diverse generation in American history, the one born at the end of the so-called American century, born just after the internet went live and just before the towers came down. The first generation for whom the American dream of doing better financially than your parents is not a guarantee, but the best generation in terms of educational attainment, volunteerism, and a belief that what you do matters more than what you earn. It will be up to you It will be up to you to redefine what it means to be an American for the 21st century, because for so much of our history, Americanness was defined in exclusive racial terms, which is odd for a nation populated by so many nations at its founding: the French, English, Spanish, the tribes of Western and Southern Africa, the Navajo, Seminole, Mohican. To be American was to be white, this new catch-all category, both shallower than those rich national identities and more imbued with meaning and rights. Now, the fact that that sounds harsh to your ears, I saw your face. What do you mean to be American is to be white? It's a good thing. It was always a fiction, created by a narrow elite to justify their own position and profits, to excuse the great immoralities of expropriating land from indigenous people and enslaving 1/8 of the population because they weren't white and therefore weren't fully human. Now, this story served its purpose. The tellers of this tale easily amassed unprecedented wealth. Fully 80% of the US gross national product on the eve of the Civil War stemmed from slave labor. Yes, painting whole groups of people with a broad brush, creating a hierarchy of human value by saying this group is good, normal, upstanding, and this group is dangerous, criminal, a threat to be controlled. That's part of our American inheritance too. Now, you all have had the opportunity to learn this fuller, more accurate, more pluralistic history of this country here at Vassar. But as you go out today and try to make sense of our political moment, I want you to remember that the majority of people alive today haven't had that opportunity. So I hope that in the America that you are going to define, every time you see someone telling that same story, that some groups of people are better than others, you question it. You ask, what kind of policies is this story trying to excuse, and who's profiting? That's what Gary does now. He still watches the politicians and the paid bullies on cable news, but he watches what they do, not just what they say. He's realized that he's actually not profiting from this story, him alongside the rest of the half of American families who can't pay a $400 bill without going into debt or selling something at a time of record corporate profits. Gary now sees that the people pointing the finger at poor families, Black people, and immigrants are the ones with the most to gain out of dividing white Americans from their common interests with people of color, from making the middle class blame the poor for how hard it is to get ahead, and generally sowing public distrust in the vehicles for collective action to improve all of our lives. This age-old story of division has a purpose today, too. Now, I'm learning a lot from seeing this country through Gary's widening eyes, as is he from seeing it through mine. But I want to be clear that even though a Brooklyn progressive and an Appalachian conservative have become friends, I don't believe it's my personal responsibility to reach out to everyone who hates and fears people like me. I don't believe we have to extend a hand or give a platform as a matter of right to people who wish us harm. Remember, Gary started the conversation by admitting his prejudice, not by denying it and saying that I was the racist for talking about racism. There are some values that should be overarching American values after so many have struggled and given their lives to make them real. And in the America that you will define, I believe that rejecting racism and sexism will be one of those core, incontrovertible values. We owe it to ourselves and to our national inheritance to make it so, and we're getting there. That's why Gary, on some instinctive level, knew he had to change in order to become a better American. So no, the black woman who was so nice to the white racist on TV is not going to advise you to always do the same. But I will advise you to remember that the idea of a hierarchy of human value is a very well-marketed idea in our media and our politics. And things will really start to change when we place our blame more on those who are selling it for their own gain than on those who are desperate enough to buy it. So what does it mean to be an American, even dare say a better American? I think the story of Gary and me is only an America story, a story of redemption and transformation and human connection across race. Because America is the world's boldest experiment in democracy, a nation of ancestral strangers with ties to every community on the globe, all met here with the audacious promise that we could become one people. I believe that if there is such a thing as American exceptionalism, its only possible source is our gorgeous diversity. And your generation will be the one to finally reap the benefits of that, to enjoy the alchemy that's created when people of different backgrounds come together to make a place better, more welcoming, more fair, more human than they found it. It's not easy, as you well know, to come together across lines of difference. There are so many misunderstandings, so many power dynamics, so many illusions and prejudices and stereotypes, but it's always worth it. And I do believe it's what's required to become, in Gary's words, a better American. Now, I'm sorry that on this special day of beginnings for the class of 2018, our politics are being strangled right now by those who are holding on white-knuckled to a tiny idea of we the people, who are denying the beauty of what you are becoming. They would have us believe that all the world's peoples have met here in order to compete for dominance. I believe that you all are going to prove them wrong. You're going to prove that the proximity of so much difference is going to reveal to us our common humanity. Your generation will say that what they say is a threat is in fact our country's salvation. For when a nation founded on a belief in a hierarchy of human value finally rejects that belief, then and only then we will have discovered a new world. That is our destiny. But to make it manifest, it'll be up to you to challenge yourselves, to live your lives in solidarity across color, origin, and class, to demand changes to the rules that could disrupt the very notion that those who have more money are worth more in our economy and our democracy. You are leaving this precious community today, and you'll go out into a society where the rules are still being written by those who were born in a different America. And I mean that quite literally. Our top political leaders are in their 70s. That means they were born before Brown v. Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act ended whites-only schools and stores, before the Immigration Act of 1965 lifted the racial bans on people becoming Americans from Africa and Asia and Latin America, before the women's rights and the gay rights movements. Though, of course, not all people of those generations are resistant to change, it's clear that some of the most powerful ones in our country right now are. They are our leaders today, but they won't be for long. You are already part of the largest potential voting bloc, larger even than the baby boomers. So you will have the chance to redefine American leadership by deciding that to be a better American is to vote, and to vote for a reflective, inclusive democracy. You are likely to leave this place today and go off and work at companies and organizations where statistics show the executives are virtually all men, 96% at the Fortune 500, and also often carrying the stories of an earlier order of things. But you will better understand those industries' fastest growing markets, young people, immigrants, and people of color, women who are leading their households. And so you'll have the chance to redefine American enterprise by deciding that to be a better American is to open up markets and the doors of opportunity to everyone. And sometimes, yes, put out a stool or an on-ramp to make sure that everyone can actually enter those doors. And finally, and this one is personal, you're going to leave today and move into neighborhoods and find new circles of friends. And as you do so, you're likely to discover that most neighborhoods don't have the diversity you experienced here on this campus. There's a sorting that happens based on whether your family has wealth or debt, whether your parents can help you with a security deposit or not, whether you feel that you're likely to be welcome in the coffee shops and bars. Our neighborhoods and towns are far more segregated than you're going to want them to be. But you will have the chance to redefine American community by deciding that to be a better American is to be a neighbor to people from all walks of life. You'll have a chance one night at a bar to look around at the group of friends that may have gravitated towards each other at your first job and decide that it's not enough because it doesn't really reflect who we are. And then you'll join some club from a culture not your own, or shoot, you'll swipe right on a person with a different background whose smile you like. Because being a better American means learning to love more Americans than just those who look like you. Now, you may be asking why this advocate for public policy is giving you love advice. Well, actually, I think it's all connected. When Americans of different backgrounds don't know each other, when we lack empathy and solidarity and, yes, love, our public policies reflect that, and we're all the worse for it. Now, I'm not that much older than you, but from my proximity to you and my perch in national policymaking, I see the America that's becoming. She's going to be led by you. She's going to value the next generation more than the next quarter's profits and finally tackle climate change. She's going to renew our democracy so that the people have the final say, not the corporations and the lobbyists. She's going to invest in what connects us, our public schools, our infrastructure, our systems and care, not in walls and prisons to divide us. You are going to renew this country's promise, and in so doing, make her welcoming to the world. You're going to be better Americans, more courageous, more ready to stand up for each other, to challenge the status quo in the interest of a larger circle of humankind. So please, take this day to say goodbye, but then go on out there and get to it. Gary and I are rooting for you. Thank you.